Yes. Well, welcome to or welcome back to TBN. TBN. This is the live stream where we focus down on what I consider to be arguably the most important critical thing that the vape community does, and that is, you know how we do it here, news, advocacy, science, policy, legislation, smoking, facts, multiple other things. Today has kind of been a big news day, and we invited our esteemed guest, Greg Conley, president of the American Vaping Association, here with us today. He agreed to come by and hang out. We thought it was just going to be a light news day. We're going to get to chit chat with Greg a little bit, tell his story about switching from smoking to vaping, his past and what he does with the AVA now. But we don't have time for any of that crap, Greg. We have big news today to talk about. Also, co-host Danielle Jones, far left fact checker Danielle Jones. You guys know Danielle Jones. She's here to fact check us.
Oh, you know.
We're trying to keep it a little bit quick, keep it a little bit tight today because we all kind of have stuff that's going on. But this has been a big news day. We're kind of going to talk all about synthetic nicotine. That seems to be the topic of the day. I put a pinned chat in there that is the CASAA call to action. It's the only thing that matters today, right now, is this CASAA call to action, because there is an upcoming federal tobacco-free nicotine TFN ban coming. I mean, and I'm not that far off. I believe it's. Yeah,
Greg can correct us, but I believe it's a de facto ban. So it essentially it puts synthetic nicotine under the FDA's purview, so that it would require a PMTA just like any other, tobacco-derived nicotine product does. And it only gives manufacturers, if I'm correct, I think it's 60, 90 days to submit said, PMTA application, even though the application requires something like at least 6 months worth of data. So that's fun math right there.
Is that a real thing, Greg? Is that what they're requiring?
Yeah, so what's happening in Washington, D.C., we'd heard rumblings of this, but the rumblings that we were hearing were later in the year, not March of 2022.
Right.
And so now you have the fiscal year 2022 omnibus budget, where if the government doesn't pass this bill by midnight on Friday, then the government shuts down. So of course something is going to be passed. And as they do in DC, just like what happened with the PACT Act, where that got added in at the last minute, even though they could have put it through the normal legislative process, they're throwing in a rider to this bill that, as you described, says that synthetic nicotine is to be regulated by CTP, just like tobacco-derived nicotine is. And unlike when FDA took over authority from tobacco-derived nicotine, and there was a 2-year delay that eventually turned into 4.5, 5 years, here you're looking at 60 to 90 days, and everything is gone. And there are no legal alternatives other than, no nicotine in your vaping product, which is not going to help smokers.
Is Congress and FDA acting within their means here? I mean, it's purely from the outside, just seems pretty quick for Congress to go, okay, let's give this power to FDA. Okay, let's do it in 60 days. Okay, that's all the manufacturers, they can just catch up and that's fine, and we can just do this.
Yeah, sadly, we know that Mitch Zeller but he's now leaving the agency. But come October, November of last year, he was in Washington, D.C. doing meetings with representatives and senators, surely telling them of the horrors of these small businesses being able to market their products and not just be shut down by Mitch.
Yeah.
And as I said, we were under the impression, and all that we have been hearing from D.C. was that this was a project for later in the year. And so you had the American Vapor Manufacturers Association with a very significant and real goal of raising enough funds to hire a real powerhouse lobbying firm in DC. But their whole plan was, okay, we'll be able to raise this money by April or May, not, hey, it's March 8th.
Yeah,
and
it's March.
Your business in a week. And that's what's scary, because there is, is my audio okay? So I see some people in the chat.
You sound
There is
okay.
a weird
there's a little distortion-y sound coming from you. I don't know what it is.
Are you using your speakers through? Are you using not headphones, speakers, right?
It could be like if you have air conditioning on in your room or something like that.
Yeah, I will turn the air conditioning off, and then you can see me sweat.
Sweat for us, Greg. Sweat. Look at Greg wearing a suit in a hotel room just to be on the
so professional.
So pro. He's such a pro sauce, top to bottom. What a class act.
Yeah, usually for interviews, you would find when I got up to turn the air conditioner off, there'd be shorts on. But I went out to dinner with people, with a friend from law school.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is an existential threat because, yes, there are still 50,000 products or however many pending PMTAs that can continue to be sold. And there are the products that were denied, that were later put back into the shuffle because of the 36 federal lawsuits that are pending. But for those that have already had their PMTAs denied, this is how they've kept feeding their families, this is how they've kept their doors open, it's the end in terms of people that don't want to break federal law. And of course, there's going to be no shortage of people willing to step forward.
People definitely will break federal law to do this. People get turned into criminals overnight. I feel like it's not super surprising in the vape industry when it's like, oh, I'm a criminal today. Okay, I wasn't yesterday doing the same thing I was yesterday, except today I am. Kind of just seems pretty par for the course. So I do expect people to break federal law. Has FDA enforced on all of the PMT applications that they denied? Like, how are they going to enforce this tobacco-free nicotine? Just seems like a pipe dream to me to be able to enforce it.
So first, what is amusing, of course, is that, and I apologize to anybody who 6 years ago, I was the one that was saying, guys, just do things the right way. Registration's coming up, product listings are coming up. Just get those done so that you don't have the FDA coming and shutting down your business or your shop. Mm-hmm. Well, lo and behold, it turned out that those who didn't register, those who didn't follow any of the FDA laws, as long as they didn't sell to minors, nobody ever has sent a letter to a Louisiana vape shop who's mixing in the back saying you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And FDA, for all their supposed concerns about disposables, even before the switch over to synthetic nicotine, they barely sent out any warning letters on the products. So FDA has just decided that they'd prefer things to be illegal federally, but they don't really have a plan of enforcement.
They just want it out there, sort of, that it's illegal. Like, just be careful, you guys. We have no way to enforce, but, you know.
Yeah, and I'm sure part of it may be that for the past several years, back to the Trump administration, CTP's been trying to get more money from Congress appropriated to it, and they haven't been successful as far as I know yet. So that may even be part of that internal politics where they want to convince people we have a problem, we need money to do enforcement.
They need money to do enforcement. Well, that tracks, I guess.
Because right now we're just looking at, in a few weeks, much of the market, not much will change actually in a few weeks because all the importers that are bringing in disposables by the truckload, they're going to keep going. And if one of them decides, okay, I'm done with this market, there'll be 3 more to step into their place.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. I haven't seen a shortage of products. Granted, I haven't gone to like vape shops and seen the sad, struggle of a vape shop struggling to stay open and then having to forced to close its doors for whatever reason. But every convenience store and head shop I go into in the greater Los Angeles area is just packed with disposables, packed with pods, packed with salt nicotine bottles of e-liquid, packed, all in this gray market. I think that gray market's still going to exist. I'm sorry for making you sweat, Greg. I feel bad about that.
And the sound is still there, so I think you can probably turn your AC back on. It wasn't that.
It wasn't the AC. If you want to be cool again, I mean, you're already pretty cool, but if you want to be a cool
I'm sorry to everybody listening. I'm not sure.
That's cool.
I'm in a Texas hotel room at the moment. It's not a very nice one, as you can see.
That's cool.
But there's going to be no shortage. I'm sorry. In my home state of New Jersey, where we have a quote-unquote flavor ban, all the convenience stores, the independent ones, they either are selling flavored disposables and just haven't been caught, or they are selling just nonstop Delta 8, other
Yeah.
disposables.
Yeah. Well, wait till the FDA and the federal government catch up to Delta 8 and THCP and THCO. Like, that seems so far out off their radar, it might as well not even exist. It's going to take them a decade to get there. I mean,
yeah, it's insane. And it's just such a damn shame that if we can't stop this, then the people that have been doing things the right way and the people who don't want to end up being in court from the FDA, people that have a house, people that have a life that they want to protect, they will have no options. Yes, there are still some products pending PMTAs that can be sold, but who knows when the day is going to come. Califf is going to be in office soon, and Mitch Zeller's replacement is going to be in office soon, whoever that is. And there's it's going to be
wild
bad.
cards. There's wild cards literally all over the place. And so FDA is making anything synthetic nicotine go through their PMTA process. But all that says to me, and I'm not even a manufacturer, is we're going to ban those. It just seems like, based on the one e-cig that they've authorized to be on the market, the world's oldest technology in an e-cig, based on that track record, what hopes does anybody with the TFN product have of getting an authorized PMTA?
No, there's no purpose. The only reason that people wish to switch to TFN, yes, it is a cleaner product, but tobacco-derived nicotine is not a dirty product. So the only utility of tobacco-free nicotine was the fact that it gave options to people to continue to produce products to help smokers stay off of cigarettes. And without that, there's no purpose.
Right, because without this rider, right, synthetic nicotine is not under the jurisdiction of FDA. With this rider, it becomes under their jurisdiction, and they can roll it right into everything else.
Yes, and it is. It's going to make it much easier. We'll discuss this later, but if this passes, it'll become much, much easier at the state level for people to pass bills that end up banning anything that FDA doesn't regulate as a vaping product. So you end up banning just sheerly because of that law, you end up banning nicotine-free e-liquids, any device that has not gone through the PMTA process. And hell, even any Delta 8, or in some of these states that have medical marijuana programs, technically these laws that we'll discuss are written so broadly that technically they ban medical marijuana cartridges for THC from being sold. Of course, I don't expect enforcement on that, but that's just how absurd these proposals have gotten. And I am hopeful that, I know AVM is working tirelessly. I was talking with Amanda earlier today. I know Mitch McConnell is always sympathetic to small businesses, including in Kentucky. So I do have some level of hope that if you have a real firm that gets on the ground tomorrow working on this, that maybe McConnell could be convinced that this is a terrible idea to do, especially right before a midterm election where it looks like Republicans are in good shape to win.
And on that note, do you have any thoughts on like the role that, industry-based advocacy organizations versus consumer-based advocacy organizations can sort of play in a bill like this? Like, what does the one side do? What does the other? Pros, cons, that sort of thing?
Sure. So my gig, I've been talking to journalists today, trying to get sympathetic or at least middle-level fair articles written. CASAA, their call to action is critically important because we want the phone lines to be ringing off the hook. Unfortunately, some senators just take messages and don't even have a live person answer, but we need people from all across the country to reach out, and hell, if you really care, go down to a district office for your U.S. senator and say, I can't get anybody on the phone, and this issue matters to me as a voter. You never know, maybe the message will get sent back. And then the industry, meanwhile, AVM, they have been working very hard on PR. They've only been in existence for a short while, but I truly believe in Amanda. And I've partnered with her on many things. It's just very difficult to respond to something that you did not expect, you didn't have any reason to suspect would be coming up so soon.
Right. And in terms of, just so everybody sort of understands the timeline of this, I know not the average vapor perhaps is not paying attention to the omnibus spending bill and what this. So this, you guys, the goal, if I'm not mistaken, Greg, the goal of this is to get voted completely into law by Friday. So we have a very, very tight deadline. We're looking at a House vote potentially today or tomorrow, and then the Senate shortly after that. They want to wrap this up ideally this week. So you guys making your phone calls, doing the call to action, potentially dropping by, district offices needs to happen immediately. There is no time to waste on this. They're trying to do it this week.
Yeah, I can't believe it's that fast of a time frame. That kind of boggles my mind. It seems very rushed. Like, let's hurry up and get this through.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the Ukraine funding, right? That's also wrapped up in this bill, the support for Ukraine, which, most Americans are like, yes, absolutely. And so I think that's, to me, that seems to be part of the driving force, because typically, you would expect conservatives to be kind of dragging their feet on a spending bill and wanting to, look into it and take their time. And we've had government shutdowns before and things like that. But I think the Ukraine, in my opinion, Greg, correct me if you have a different, but I think the funding for Ukraine in here, it sort of changes the game a bit.
Partially, yes. And partially that this is just stopgap funding measures. It's not like Biden has put forth a budget that adds $1 trillion to the national debt, and there's something for Republicans to be angry about. This is just kind of continuing things, and then Congress shoves in whatever special projects that they can negotiate into the bill. And unfortunately, in this case, you have any company that has a PMTA or expects to receive a PMTA. They are very supportive of any measure to go after synthetic nicotine. And so you also have the fact that these Republicans, who are often clinging to my love of small business and being business friendly, well, they get approached and they think inaccurately that Reynolds, Juul, Blue, that's the market. That's the vaping market. And then the little small guys, they're nothing. And they can be very convincing in saying that this is a pro-business, that this is going to clean up the bad actors, this is going to give certainty to those that are doing things the right way. That's how they sell this, and they don't bother to mention that, hey, there's 5,000 or however many shops that are very much at risk of closing.
Yeah, and I saw Paul Blair on Twitter saying something very, very similar, kind of talking about how Altria and Juul and these companies make it seem like there's a consensus on this within the industry. Oh, no, the industry doesn't want synthetic nicotine. The industry, they make it seem as though there's this consensus when it's really very not that way. And to what Greg said, thousands of small businesses that do not see it that way either.
Well, exactly. And this is one of the prime examples where, on a lot of issues, we may be on the same side as the tobacco companies on some things, right? A lot of flavor bans, a lot of, different things were on their side. But this is a prime example of where we may diverge on what we want. And I would hope and think, although I know this isn't going to happen, that, people who are paying attention would perhaps notice that all of a sudden there's this divide from your tobacco companies and then all of your small independent vape community, and go, oh, look, actually, they're not the same thing. And, and that would help us. But of course, nobody knows.
Yeah, it's almost a repeat of what happened with Philip Morris and Altria in the 90s. In the early 2000s, where Juul was public enemy number one, just like Philip Morris was public enemy number one throughout the 1980s. And then they came out, they changed some executives, they changed their lobbying team, and changed their messaging to be, I don't know if they've admitted they've made mistakes because they're involved in so many lawsuits, but we could have approached our product launches better many years ago. But we are a new company, and we are a leader in the market, and we want to be responsible. That's why we took our flavors off the market, et cetera, et cetera. And they're setting themselves up to fix their public image. And honestly, if Juul wasn't trying to kill the market for everybody but themselves, I would be on Juul's side, because nothing that Juul did ever came to the level of what Philip Morris, dead and retired executives of Philip Morris did. And of course, this is a whole changing tobacco landscape where these companies, for the first time, really do think there's a future in these products. Unfortunately, they are still big corporations who almost monolithically believe that the market and regulations should benefit them as much as they believe in these products.
Yeah, we call that privilege, Greg Conley. They have some
Yes.
severe market privilege. But that kind of leads us into, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit earlier so synthetic nicotine isn't just going to be federally prohibited by the end of the week, but it's happening on a local level as well. And Juul's involved in that because for reasons. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Sure. So I think this was an idea. It's not exactly a revolutionary idea to say only products with PMTAs or PMTAs pending can be sold in a state. But I think it was the idea of a registry where manufacturers would have to pay a small fee to a state and send in their whole list of products with PMTAs pending or PMTAs authorized. And then they would be required to update the registry within 30 days of if any changes happen to their PMTA process. So Altria had first pitched this bill in Missouri a couple years ago and never got a committee hearing. I think it literally was an example. Sometimes bills get introduced purely so that lobbyists can go to other states and say, "Hey, this bill was introduced in Missouri last year," so it's at least good enough for introduction. And so what these bills do is the first one that passed was last year in Oklahoma. In the middle of COVID, there was no remote testimony options. There was no Oklahoma Vapers Group. And we were in the middle of so many different things last year that it just happened. It passed. And it's a bill that says the original form, as it passed last year, was come July of this year, 2022, no vaping product can continue to be sold unless it is PMTA authorized or PMTA pending. And the problem is that dumb Greg wrote the definition of vapor product in Oklahoma law 8 years ago. It was one of the biggest, the career defining, before I ever had a career, was when a Oklahoma state senator who actually used snus and was an advocate for tobacco harm reduction got misled by Reynolds into thinking that 5 cents per milliliter would be welcomed by vapors. And he ended up getting rid of the tax, just banning sales to minors. And I suggested, like an idiot, well, here's the definition of vapor product that is extremely broad because we do not want youth to be vaping in school and then say, oh, you can't get me in trouble because this doesn't contain nicotine. And then the school says, oh, shit, we're not spending $300, pardon my French, on a test to determine whether or not there's nicotine in this. So 8 years later, you get a bill hastily passed that says PMTA registry, July 2022. No vaping product, including devices, including nicotine-free e-liquids, even though FDA nicotine-free e-liquids. So they passed that last year, as well as Alabama just passed a synthetic nicotine ban. But this year, because the small businesses noted, like, oh my God, this is the end for us. Yeah. There's a bill that's getting a 2-year delay that the American Vapor Manufacturers Association has been behind. A 2-year delay in Oklahoma is very likely. The Alabama group is also working on some sort of delay on their synthetic ban. Who knows if this will this Congress thing will screw things up. But this week, I testified in Georgia just yesterday. I took a 6 a.m. flight to Georgia to speak at 1 p.m. at a hearing, or 2 p.m. at a hearing that was not formally announced until 11 a.m. yesterday. That is how dirty that state governments can get, particularly in the South. I love the South, but they have a culture where if you are not politically connected, if you do not have a lobbyist, you are screwed.
You're on the
so thankfully, the Georgia group does have a good lobbyist who has been on top of this. We ended up at that hearing yesterday. A Juul regional director who I've met once or twice, she spoke at the hearing alongside the state senator who introduced it. The state senator who introduced it is a powerful Senate Rules Committee chairman who's been there for 20 years. He had received something like $4,600 or $4,800 from Juul over the last 2 election cycles. And he announced that day that he was not running for re-election. So the committee hearing, it was great because we had 3 or 4 Georgia small business owners who spoke from the heart. And then I was there to be the one to answer all of their questions about the PMTA process and how messed up it is and try to draw some parallels between different points of contention on federal regulation that they may feel on issues related to vaping. And we ended up, in the end, they didn't want to kill the bill, in part because they'd already killed another bill from the powerful senator, and no one wants to mess with the powerful senator. They ended up passing the bill out, but they did an amendment to change all the dates to 2 years in the future, so 2024, 2025. So if we manage to defeat this, the good news is that Georgia, if this even becomes law, which it very well may not be in Georgia, that they'll have an additional 2 years. Also, this Tuesday at I believe 1 p.m., 12 p.m. and 1 p.m., the same bill or a similar bill will be heard in Tennessee. So I will be heading to Tennessee because Dimitri is overseas at the moment.
And so this
So
is like a.
stuff.
It's like a.
And I totally respect, by the way, South Carolina is another possibility for a PMTA registry bill. They have a bill that's been sitting there for a year that is preemption to stop flavor bans and stuff at the local level.
Sure.
And that would be a perfect vehicle. Not perfect in my mind, but a perfect vehicle for the sponsors or for Juul, for Reynolds, to throw the PMTA registry in there to say, hey, yeah, this is a preemption bill, but hey, look how tough we are on the damn vaping companies. And North Carolina, God knows, North Carolina Reynolds can get much of anything done. So those are very much threats at the moment. Thankfully, we killed Mississippi. That died. Maryland is dead on arrival. So it's really just Georgia and Tennessee at the moment.
Okay. What is so Juul does still not have a market authorization? I mean, am I wrong? Are they not authorized to be on the market yet still?
No, and I think Juul has concluded that if they get denied, the company's just dead, or the company's just going to operate overseas. They fully expect that their tobacco, at the very least, will get authorized. And the science that Juul has behind their products, if Views Solo can get a PMTA, when I don't think Reynolds submitted any data showing that smokers were actually switching to that terrible product, then Juul's able to show the science that, hey, no youth were using our tobacco flavors, and menthol usage, especially in the age of disposables for the youth who are still vaping. We've seen big declines in youth vaping, but the youth have migrated away from Juul. So there is a case to be made, a very strong case, even though I'm very angry with the company and their management. The product should get PMTAs. But I think they've just concluded that they're not going to go into synthetic in the future. That's not something that Altria would ever want to do, because as came out in the FTC ruling on the Juul-Altria deal, Altria cares more than anything in the world about their relationship with the FDA and their relationships with what it is. So they recognize this is not something we're going to do, so no one should be allowed to do it.
That boggles my mind. That is literally, it's just a market share move then? That's it? They just want, Altria and Juul want TFN gone because they don't do it, and it's going to protect their market share.
So I will play devil's advocate for a moment and say,
it.
if I'm Juul and I'm continuing to get blamed for 11-12% of youth vaping, even though our actual youth usage rate is probably 1% or below, and you have all of these China-made disposables being sold into the market with no registration with FDA, no way that, God forbid, thankfully we have a great track record in this industry of not injuring or killing anyone because the products are so simple. We've never had any volley-like situation with a nicotine vaping product, but there's no, most of these disposables are sold without real detailed manufacturer information. There's no recalls that would ever be able to be done. So it is a mess, but it's a mess that was created by FDA. It's not Juul's fault that FDA is incompetent and it hates the industry. So if I was an investor in Juul, I'd probably say, yeah, even beyond improving our market share. All these companies it's just a mess in this industry, and the only way you're going to reform it is if the market is small. But that necessarily means that your market will grow bigger. So there is no, it is not by any means a nice thing that they are doing. They understand that this is a move to increase their market share.
Fucking Juul. I know I made those anti-Juul stickers for a reason a few years ago. Have you vaped a Juul lately, Greg Conley?
I have not.
It's terrible.
I did sit down.
It already feels outdated. It feels like old tech.
Yeah, that's what's crazy in this market. Like, even the big guys, PMI, their IQOS that they have gotten authorized from the FDA is like 3 generations behind.
Yeah.
They have to file a whole new application just to be able to. I think they made an upgrade to version 2 so you could charge while you're using, and they still had to go through the MRTP process, and I don't think that's even been authorized yet. So it is an utter mess that even the big guys are years behind because of FDA. Not because they don't want to release things, not because they don't want smokers to switch, because the FDA is not a fair regulatory system, even for companies that are willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me. Even if Juul gets a PMTA for their tobacco flavor, I'm going to put it mentally in the same category as the Vuse Solo. It feels that outdated to me that even a pod from 2 years ago feels way newer, way tastier, way better performing than the Juul Virginia tobacco. It's just not a good thing.
And this market has innovated in such crazy ways. Like, I just got sent, God bless the person who did this, sent me a bunch of disposables.
Yeah.
And these are 16 milliliter disposables, which is insane. You have to charge this thing partway through usage. It has that much left.
Yeah.
And these products aren't going to go away. They are going to continue to be sold. And if this goes through, it's going to make, as I said, the PMTA registry bills much easier to pass. Maybe we can get amendments to exclude nicotine-free and devices. But it's going to be a shock to the system in some states where even people who don't vape nicotine, people who vape THC in a legal or illegal state, they're going to find all of a sudden, I can't buy a battery with a charger. And that's a distinct possibility that's the end result.
They have to be aware of these unintended consequences, or do they just, like most unintended consequences, they just pretend it's not real or that it's not going to happen? Of course, there won't be a black market in Massachusetts when we ban flavors. Of course, they're not going to go over the border, get cheaper cigarettes in another state. That's not going to happen.
So the FDA employees who I know who speak to people in the industry regularly, there are a few, they completely understand that this situation is just completely unworkable. And they know that there's going to be a massive black market, and they know that the FDA has no hope of controlling it. And sure, some of the senators and representatives recognize that there are black market consequences to things, but these are the same senators and representatives that will vote 433-2 to add 100 new chemicals to the DEA's banned list of drugs.
Right.
So you don't have that recognition yet among more than a handful of legislators that the drug war is a failure. And until you get that, then the messaging of, while you're creating black and illicit markets, that only works when politicians just don't want to really do something, like when they don't want to give up menthol cigarette tax revenue, all of a sudden they care about the black market.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's just not something that politicians are willing to recognize that, hey, this is our fault when it happens, and it's going to happen.
Bananas, Greg Conley. Bananas. So I just want to back up real quick. The nuts and bolts of this local synthetic nicotine, it is such that the law says that nothing can be sold in the state unless it's PMTA approved. That's the basics of it, right?
Authorized or pending.
Authorized or pending.
From the effective date. So, for example, if we don't get the fix in Oklahoma this year, if it just goes into law in July, I believe July, every manufacturer will have to, that has a PMTA pending or authorized, will have to pay a small fee, somewhere under $500, I forget the number, to the Oklahoma state government and register their products. And then come September, the database will be publicly available, and it will be sent out to all the tobacco retailers, and it will say, you cannot, this is our definition of a vaping product, this definition that some schmuck wrote 8 years ago, not realizing what he was going to do. And nothing that fits this definition of a vaping product can be sold in Oklahoma unless it's on this list.
It's on this list, and that extends to
That
batteries.
extends to devices.
Cotton.
It extends to nicotine-free e-liquids, components or parts. So there a lot of the talk about certain things like cotton and such. Those aren't going to be enforcement targets. But
No.
if you're running a vape shop, they don't need to go after you for cotton.
Right.
They'll have plenty of products. You'll have plenty of products on your shelf, most likely. And of course, as I said, if it goes into effect in July and FDA is still sitting on 50,000 PMTAs, including, like, for example, Turning Point Brands, they got hundreds of their products back on the market because of their pending federal lawsuit. So there will be time for businesses to continue operating, assuming FDA doesn't just suddenly in April drop the ban hammer on 99% of the remaining PMTAs. But that's the question. When is the hammer going to drop? And it will be overnight that all these products that people have on their shelves won't be able to be sold. And at least if you didn't have a state law, you could have businesses to say, well, I'm going to keep selling these things, and then if FDA comes to me, then I'll shut down. Right. But at the state level, all it's going to take is one angry, miserable person to call the Oklahoma Alcoholic Beverage Licensing Commission and say, hey, that tobacco stuff you regulate, still got businesses selling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they can use local PD to enforce, right? It's not like waiting for the FDA to show up with their clipboards. You've got law enforcement at your shop door.
Yeah. In Oklahoma, for instance, ABLE, which regulates alcohol, tobacco, maybe the marijuana market, I'm not sure. They would have the authority, but of course they can then work with local police if they have any issues with anybody. But most of the time, I'm sure they'll go into stores and they'll say, hey, this bill would allow us to fine you probably a 5-figure number for the amount of products you have sitting on your shelf. So if I'm back here in a week, we'll have problems. That's how they'll mostly operate. And it's very, I try to keep a very,
I can see a fake smiling in there.
Positive nature, even though everything I deal with is negative in state legislation, but it is not good yet. And of course today, it was all my fault again, because I took a personal day today. I had planned I flew out.
So it was you, Greg. It was you. I see.
It was all my fault. I am in Harlingen, Texas right now. A friend of mine from law school, she came out here afterwards, and I haven't seen her since. So I figured, I'm in Atlanta. That's a hub. I got here for $200 or something. I'll go visit my friend. And then just as I'm getting on the plane this morning, the news drops.
And
it was Greg. He triggered it. I see.
Greg, we thought you were an ally, Greg Conley.
I know, all these years. Wolf in sheep's clothing, as I always use in testimony. I have many buzzwords and buzz phrases, and wolf in sheep's clothing is one of them.
You get called a wolf in sheep's clothing, yeah.
Somehow this is probably out of the Big Tobacco playbook. I mean, there's got to be something.
The Big Tobacco playbook.
Right.
Vacation days. I just studied tobaccodocuments.org for years and learned what to do.
There you go.
When you speak to local, health committees or whatever, city councilors, do they have a little bit of an idea or a grasp on the FDA PMTA process, or do they just look at you like you have lobsters crawling out of your ears?
If you're a nerd like me, most people will not find this incredibly entertaining, but the Oklahoma bill that Amanda Wheeler and AVM lobbied for to do the delay of the PMTA registration, that bill was heard in, I believe, the Oklahoma House or Senate Health Committee a week and a half ago.
Okay.
And it had 15 minutes of discussion, and not one single person in that room, including the sponsor, had a damn clue what the PMTA process was. His explanation for his delay, and God bless him, he's sponsoring the bill that we like, so I don't care what you say. He said, the reason we need this delay is because of COVID. The FDA did not meet in 2022 to go over PMTAs. That's just
what? He said that with a straight face. He said that.
Yeah, and I think he believes it. I don't know how he came to it, But
Wow.
They just
that
didn't
is,
work during COVID.
and in some ways that's true. They just decided at the end to deny everything. But the hearing itself, it's only 15 minutes, and nobody has any idea. They're asking the sponsor questions, and the sponsor's like, I wish I had somebody here to tell you about this. No, I don't think anybody knew, like myself or Amanda, had enough notice that we could have gotten to Oklahoma and testified. We would gladly. Bill did pass out of committee because that's just the way things work. In a Republican-dominated legislature, most of the bills will at least move forward out of the first committee if it's a Republican sponsor. But nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. That's why I have to schlep all over the nation to do testimony on these bills, because it's a complicated subject, and you try to connect with them and say, hey, you should not have to become an expert on a niche area of federal regulatory law mid-session just to know whether or not you're doing the right thing voting on a bill. So if you don't understand what's going on and what the consequences will be, why don't we study this further? And as of now, those arguments have been working. I just don't know how, if we go to Tennessee on Tuesday, just off this bill being sent to Biden's desk, how that is going to be.
Right.
Wow. Well, like I said, all that matters today is that CASAA call to action. There's a tobacco-free nicotine ban. What did we establish? This week, by Friday, should be
more than likely,
be in place.
Yeah, they certainly could. If something gets held up, they could pass a continuing resolution for a week or something. So that would be the goal. Part of the lobbying strategy is to try to convince McConnell or somebody to push for a 1 week delay or something. But yes, it is an immediate threat. And as I said, there was no indication that it was coming in this bill. And I know AVA has been working very hard and has connections on the Hill, as do I. And there was no indication that this was coming immediately.
This seems to be a new tactic, right? That they're just, I mean, this is how we ended up getting the PAC Act through, right? Was through that other
I'm having like
omnibus,
flashbacks of the vape mail ban. They did the same damn thing. Omnibus, it has to pass.
Yeah, the reality is that Congress is broken, and if a bill has any kind of controversy attached to it, it doesn't normally get passed. It's just so many ways to hold up a bill. So this is the new way that legislative policy around the executive branch gets made, is they insert riders. And unfortunately, if you're not spending 6-7 figures a year down in Washington, D.C., you're not part of the community. And even if you have great stories, great business owners, all the meetings in the world, sometimes you can still get screwed. And I think it's a triumph if this is quote unquote the end. And it's certainly not going to be the end, because vaping is going to continue regardless of what Congress does. I just think back to 2009, 2010, 2011, when I first started going to tobacco industry events like the Tobacco Manufacturers Association. And me, baby-faced at 25 years old or however old I was, would talk to these 50-year-old tobacco executives. And most of them would say, hey, it's funny, you guys are really building up a market here, but you guys only have like a year. You have 2 years, and FDA is going to come in, or the states are going to come in, and it's all going to be over. And I remember Dr. Not Benowitz, the older gentleman who was at R Street Institute, who was one of the first people to come out in support of vaping. He lives in Louisiana. I can't remember his name. Great guy, though. He actually wrote back in 2015, hey, I believe that this market will not be fully regulated until 2022. I believe, I literally will have to find the email where he predicts that because of delays, because of how DC works, that it will be 7 years before the worst.
It feels like it's been longer than that. Even when I think about in 2009 when I started vaping, it was like 14 years ago, 13 years ago. And we're still here in 2022 with the FDA. They've authorized one e-cig, and now we're trying to avert a synthetic nicotine ban. That's what they've accomplished in 13 years. That just seems crazy to me, Greg Conley.
It's insane.
Right?
This whole it's very unfortunate that vaping did not come along, or fortunate, depending on what would have happened. The vaping did not come along 5 years earlier, because on the downside, glasses half empty. If vaping had come around in 2004, then when the Tobacco Control Act was passed in 2009, maybe they would have given FDA immediate regulatory authority over vaping products. But at least the ones that were on the market in 2007 would have been grandfathered in. But glass is half full. If you had the products around for 5 years, if you built up businesses, if you'd gotten meetings with legislators, if you've gotten science published showing that there's harm reduction to these products, the kind of science that we didn't get published really until 2014 is when we really, the convincing data came out that would be good enough for people that weren't vapors. You could have ended up having a directive to the FDA and the Tobacco Control Act, hey, cigarettes are regulated one way and non-combustibles another. Because back in 2009, the concept of non-combustibles, there was about 8 people in America who understood what snus was, and then everyone else just considered it chewing tobacco.
Yeah.
Right.
Wrongfully considered it chewing tobacco. Even myself at that time, 100%. Thought the same thing about chewing tobacco, thought the same thing about snus. It wasn't until years later when you hear Dr. Brad Radu talk, and he says that chewing tobacco is as big a harm reduction measure as switching from smoking to vaping. That just ruins everything I have in my head about tobacco and harm reduction and nicotine and everything. And I thought, I have been lied to my whole life. My entire life.
I met a state senator yesterday in Georgia who chews tobacco. And I said to him, I said, well, the good news for you, sir, is any product, any modern American product that is smoke-free is at least 95% less hazardous than smoking. So your wife may get on you about it, but as long as you're not smoking cigarettes, you're making the right choice for your health. Yeah. And I even showed him a little can of snus that I carry around with me when I go to state legislative hearings, and he'd actually used it before.
Oh, yeah.
So
how do we get more woke, hip politicians like that? I need more smoking politicians who have tried to quit smoking. It seems like that's real hard to come by, even though it shouldn't be.
Yeah, unfortunately, you also end up with self-righteous ex-smokers.
Oh, yeah.
Right, like Bloomberg or something.
Or people who are ashamed of themselves in some way for using the product, and so thus they do not want to make any situation where a young person may deem it acceptable to use. So we just need people who appreciate freedom and understand in unintended consequences. I don't care if you ever vaped in your life. You can be a Mormon for all I care if you recognize that you can't just ban things and everything will be okay.
Yeah, right. It still hurts my brain that in 2022 the word prohibition even gets thrown around. Even gets like mildly entertained. Anytime someone says prohibit this, prohibition on that, everyone should go, hang on. Do you not remember when that failed tremendously? But we keep coming back to it. Does our brain erase? I don't understand it. I don't understand how prohibition is even an option.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we're a month away probably from the menthol cigarette and flavored cigar ban dropping.
Well, at least flavored cigars are finally getting their fucking comeuppance. They get exempted at every turn, and I'm sick of it.
It is usually premium cigars that get exempted, and they're fine. The premium cigar people won't be impacted.
Premium.
The kids aren't using the premium cigars, Nick. I mean, come on.
I did when I was younger.
But yeah, it is funny when, for example, Beverly Hills, when they passed their all-out tobacco sales ban, they exempted, I believe, the cigar bar and the very rich hotels in Beverly Hills, where you can get menthol cigarettes delivered to your door, because we wouldn't disturb the out-of-towners coming to Beverly Hills.
Yeah, we need to get them their menthol cigarettes as discreetly as possible.
Yes, and they're blunts for other people.
Yeah.
Speaking of still getting products, we had a question in chat. Someone wants to know about how this various legislation, both federally and at the state level, affects products and sales on Native American reservations and casinos.
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. I feel like the FDA has regulatory authority over the Native Americans through different compacts and things that have been signed. I could be wrong, but I seem to recall researching this and coming to the conclusion that at the FDA level, not the state level, but at the FDA level, that the FDA does have the authority to come on to a reservation and shut down a shop.
Yeah, that I would think that makes sense because, like, if you imagine, they'd be them being able to perhaps sell a medical treatment that is not approved in the United States, but you could get. I mean, I could see them
It's like
not
Dave's
liking that.
COVID vaccine.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get you.
But at the state level, that, like, for example, I think New York, when they passed the flavor ban, or Washington State, when they had some restrictions on, I think people started setting up businesses on Native American reservations to get away from that. But it's not going to be a great option for federally.
Right. Good question, chat.
Yeah, good question. Let me ask you this, Greg Conley. How optimistic are you overall? Just overall. In your position right now, American Vaping Association, you're on the ground, you're doing the work, you're getting your hands dirty. How optimistic are you?
Not incredibly so, but it depends on what I'm optimistic or pessimistic about. Honestly, for the small and medium-sized business owners, I can't lie and claim I'm optimistic about the future of your shops and your businesses and your manufacturing facilities. But vapors, individual vapors, just as it's easy, it's just as easy to find marijuana and cannabis as it is alcohol. Vapors will find a way. The existing vapors, especially. I also have some faith that eventually there will be truthful information coming out from the FDA, from CDC, on alternatives, the alternatives that actually get PMTAs or get MRTPs in the future, but it's just going to be slow. So I am pessimistic that if we did nothing on vaping, nothing on non-combustibles, just let them exist, I think we'd lower smoking rates far faster than we will under the FDA system. But ultimately, I do believe that there will be some market for non-combustibles continuing in America, and that more smokers will switch. But I do think it will mostly be to either corporate products from big companies, or it will be black market products.
Yeah, I've always felt that it's vaping. Once you know about it and how simple it is, we're still going to vape. Of course we're still going to be able to vape. It's the most dead easy thing to mix your own liquids. Like, you need a battery, we can vape. We'll be fine. But the people who smoke are going to have to jump through 1,000 hoops to vape, or are just going to continue to be people who smoke.
Yeah, and we're already at 12% of the American public believing vaping is much less hazardous than smoking. Something around 12% was the CDC 2020 number. So you already have plenty of smokers out there who aren't switching to vaping, not because they can't get a mango pod from Juul, but because they think that their lungs are going to fall out if they switch to vaping. That is still around. That is still very prevalent. I still deal with it on a daily basis. But I have hope that in the future, and I'm stuck in this world. I roped myself in when I was 23, 24, 25, and it's the only world that I know. So no matter what, as long as there's vaping in America, I'm going to continue trying to work on this issue. Because I do think
you and me both, Greg. We're stuck. Look, I'll be there with you.
I'm here for it. I tell everybody, this is the hill I'm going to die on. I never had a path or like a calling or anything before ever in my life. Whatever. I was just a skid, skidding my way through life until suddenly vaping and tobacco harm reduction existed, and I went, oh, okay, that's my calling, and this is the hill I'm going to die on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty much my experience as well. When I was in law school and switched to the product and saw that there were states trying to ban it while leaving cigarettes on the market, and 11 years later, here we are.
Yeah, same. I mean, I had a very similar experience. California tried to ban vaping in 2010. That's my advocacy story. I was radicalized by California when they wanted to blanket ban vaping, and it finally got vetoed by Arnold. And all of this happened in the span of like 2 weeks, and I was just a bundle of nerves the entire time. I made like a YouTube video. I was like, you guys, we should probably do something. I don't know what we can do. Should be something. That radicalized me, and whatever, 12 years later, here we are.
That is an unspoken uncovered element of the history of vaping that had Schwarzenegger not vetoed that bill, very likely would have had spread to multiple states.
Severe.
Right.
It would have spread so quickly. In 2010, there weren't many vapors. There wasn't a network. There wasn't CASAA. There wasn't SAFADA. There wasn't anything back then.
Back when I got my first vape, I had to order online, and then when something broke, I had to call Drew, one of the original CASAA board members, who was
Rest in peace,
about
Drew.
an hour away from me, and beg him, because I wasn't on CASAA's board at that point, but beg him, like, please let me drive up and get something from you. I don't want to smoke. And that was the reality for the early adopters.
Yeah.
And now things are completely different. But I have faith that the early adopters, the people who have switched, who have made the switch, the very few of them will actually return to smoking because the illicit market will exist. But I do greatly worry about the existing 34 million American smokers. Not to mention, uncovered in this is that synthetic nicotine is not just being used in vaping products, it's also being used in nicotine pouches, which are the least possible hazardous tobacco nicotine product in the world, because all you have is a little pouch with some nicotine and some sugar or whatever the heck is in that thing to give it flavor. And that's it. And you have a whole market for synthetic nicotine pouches at the moment. All of those will be affected as well. Whereas the state level bills mostly are just centered purely on vaping.
It's crazy how much they want us to not vape. Like at every turn, they're just like, but have you heard about cigarettes? But we have cigarettes for sale. No, those are banned, but cigarettes. I've never felt this kind of peer pressure to smoke cigarettes since 7th grade. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and of course the Republican sponsor, the Republican behind this this rider, is Richard Burr from North Carolina, who represents R.J. Reynolds and previously got on the Senate floor. I don't know what happened with this, but he claimed, I'm going to come here every week and speak about the FDA trying to ban menthol cigarettes. And then he never spoke about the issue again, at least on the floor. But Richard Burr listens to R.J. Reynolds, and maybe one day he will, I can say this now because he's doing something bad, hopefully he will see the inside of a prison cell for whatever insider trading he did.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hopefully a lot of Congress, I at least want them to stop being able to buy and sell stocks before everybody else. That'd be the first step.
Well, it does make me happy that Josh Gottheimer, who is a jerk liberal Democrat in New Jersey, it just came out that like a week before the Ukraine war broke out, he bought a bunch of stock in Russian companies. So if he didn't sell it immediately, he lost some money.
Justice.
So I'll at least take solace in that.
That's some justice. Yeah, that is a little bit of justice. Damn, that is a little bit of justice. Well, you guys, let's see. We've been going for a solid hour now. I think we can wrap this up. Please do the CASAA call to action. Please do the CASAA call to action. Do what Greg said. If you want to get more serious about it, let's get on the phone call. Let's go down to your local office. Let's say that this issue, this matters to me. As a constituent, this matters to me. Let me ask you one last question, just because I'm curious. You've been vaping, Greg Conley, for just as long as I have. 2009-ish is when you started?
Yeah, August 2010 is when I actually quit. I
August 2010, so I think that's fine. It's coming to a point now where I've been vaping for longer than I smoked cigarettes, and I kind of keep getting the random question, especially from some family members, well, when are you going to quit that too? When are you going to quit that too? And when I started vaping, when I started smoking, I had never had any intention of quitting. And I don't really feel like I have any intention of quitting vaping either. But I'm just wondering if you've come to a similar place where you've been vaping so long that you kind of go, I guess I'm just going to keep doing this.
I greatly enjoy nicotine. I understand nicotine is
Same.
not what kills people from smoking. If one day I decide to put down vaping, I will probably just use snus or pouches instead. I greatly enjoy it. I do not really do any other serious drugs. This is my vice. I rarely even drink. I think I after that hearing yesterday, I went back to my hotel and I had a gin and tonic, and I'm pretty sure It was the first alcoholic beverage I had drank since I was in Mexico like 9 months ago.
Yeah.
So we all pick our vices.
Yeah, that's true. We all pick, and you have no other vices except nicotine, caffeine. Come on, Greg, don't tell me you don't
Yes.
have caffeine.
Yes,
Okay,
Oh,
caffeine.
who doesn't? Only crazy people don't do caffeine.
I
I'm
don't.
sorry.
I haven't done caffeine in years.
Okay, you're crazy.
Years. I know. I know I'm crazy.
And yes, as somebody points out in the oh, he was talking about you. Somebody just pointed out he shaved, how professional. But I will also
Oh,
point
that's
out
right. I didn't even notice.
Mhm. Trying to look a little more distinguished these days. Greg Conley shaved too, though, just for this stream.
I did
I
because
mean-
I don't have
You told me
anything.
that.
I don't have any media to do tomorrow, so we'll be working on this as I travel.
Yeah. Well, listen, Greg, thank you for what you do for the
Thank
industry.
you.
Thank you for being boots on the ground. Thank you for being a voice of reason. Thank you for trying to educate lawmakers and the public who might not otherwise be interested in being educated. We really do very much appreciate everything that you do. And I don't know. I truly and honestly don't know how you do it. I don't know how you sit there with a smile on your face knowing that you're over your eyeballs and just bureaucratic FDA horse shit. I don't know how you do it. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate your positivity.
I try. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the AVM is trying to raise money to bring on that big powerhouse lobbying firm.
Mhm.
It's our last chance beyond just those phone calls and emails. That's not going to be enough. That's going to provide the launching pad to have these discussions to maybe stop this or delay it. But our website is vaping.org. We also accept donations, but right now, I think the most critical thing is funding AVM's lobbying effort this week. And I am in Harlingen because somebody asked in the chat, I'm in Harlingen because a friend of mine from law school, I haven't seen her since we graduated together, and she just had a baby a few months ago. So I just randomly decided, okay, I'm already traveling. My poor girlfriend has had to deal with me for the last 2 years of COVID, so she deserves a break.
A
So I
longer
decided-
break. There you go.
Yeah.
So my plan was, and I still may, my plan was to go down to Monterey, Mexico, and just kind of relax and write for a couple days, and then
Yeah.
fly to Tennessee for the hearing next week. But we will see where the hell I end up because of all this.
Yeah, because look, regulations don't stop. FDA don't stop.
Nope.
Congress doesn't stop doing whatever Congress does. Trading stocks, apparently, selling stocks before everybody else. It doesn't stop. Well, I'm sorry that your day off got ruined. I'm sorry that your little Mexico trip got ruined.
We will see.
We'll see.
All good.
Okay.
Not the first
well,
trip, but the last.
Greg, one more time. Thank you for coming on the stream. This is your first official appearance on a GrimmGreen YouTube stream. I'm hoping it won't be the last, but
No, I feel like I've been on before. I don't know.
Let's
We've done
see.
so much.
On the new and improved version with me on.
Yeah, not with Danielle
Okay,
Jones.
no, I have
Maybe
not
you
been
have
on
one
the new and
this.
improved version.
Well, I really very much appreciate you making the time, Greg. I don't want to take up any more of your time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. And here's the last thing I'll say. Just do the CASAA call to action. Everybody in the chat, do the CASAA call to action. If you know anybody
And
who
tomorrow,
owns...
make phone calls.
And make phone calls. And it's not difficult to make phone calls. It seems intimidating. It's really not. You just get on the
It's
phone
not.
like a boss and you just make your case. And it's so super
You are
easy.
not going to talk to your senator. You're not going to have
No.
the senator or congressman
No.
answer the phone and say, "What the hell do you want?" You're going to have a nice operator who's going to ask for your message to the senator, and you speak 1 or 2 sentences, give your name and address.
Mhm.
That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
You've done
Very
it before,
simple.
Danielle? I've done it before. I've made phone calls.
Oh yeah, I've
before.
done it. And if I feel nervous, I actually type up on my computer real quick just a couple notes because I'm a classic millennial, right? When I have to pick up the phone, I have like an anxiety attack, right? Because we don't use phone. If I could text my senator, that would be great. But you got to call, right? So I write down bullet points, right? So I put what it is, usually a bill number or omnibus spending bill, whatever it is. My point is, yes or no. Are we saying don't do this or please do this? And then just a quick little here's why. You're going to talk to a receptionist or a secretary. It's not going to be anything crazy. They could care less what your message is.
Yeah.
They're just going to ask you a series of questions, right? What's your name? Zip code, address. What's your message? It takes like 2 minutes. I promise you guys, it's not scary.
Mhm. Super easy. It's super easy. You're really just
And
talking
by
to
the
an
way,
operator.
I'll say, if you are a business owner, you need to take additional steps. You need to
Yes.
call not the DC office. You can call the DC office, but also the district office for your congressman. Especially Congress is the House is probably nothing's going to happen in the House positive for us, but the Senate, your two
Yes.
U.S. senators, you need to call the district office and say, this is an emergency. I need to talk to somebody about the rider in the FY 2022 omnibus bill. And hopefully we end up with district offices across the country getting 10, 20, 30, hopefully more business owners calling them saying, if this goes through, my business is done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you need that information, you can look up, CASAA has a legislator lookup tool on our website.
Yep.
So if you're interested in visiting or calling directly and doing more than just the call to action, just it's under the Get Involved tab. Just do legislator lookup, put your address in. You'll get all of your reps. You can find, all your reps and senators. You can find, the information, and then there's more details. Yeah, here, Nick's going to do it right now.
Oh,
hopefully it
let's
doesn't
see.
dox you, Nick. Careful.
Get involved. Yeah. Okay. So this is the U.S. nicotine ban. I'm going to put a link in the description. Where am I supposed to go, Danielle? I'm so confused. Where
So
do I
go to Get Involved at the top,
Involved.
and then click Legislator Lookup.
Oh, look at that. Look how easy that was. Legislator lookup. That's loading.
You have weird. There you
There you
go.
Okay. Well, let's delete that. But that's where you look up your legislator lookup, and it'll tell you who's in your area. Contact them. Go to their. No, don't go to their house. I was gonna say go to their house. Don't go to their house.
No, but once they load up, you'll hit more details, and it'll tell you main office, main contact, other office locations, which will be your district or local offices, all of their contact information. Everything you need is there, you guys.
Everything is there. Look, a consumer org is only as strong as the consumers. So we have to do this call to action for the sake of vaping, for the sake of each other, for the sake of CASAA, for the sake of the 400,000 plus people who smoke that are going to die this year. And that's horrible. And that's who we need to do it for. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. One last time, thank you, Greg Conley, for coming on. I'm going to put a link in the description. People can follow Greg on Twitter. Danielle Jones, damn it, it's always a pleasure. I'll put a link in for your Twitter as well in the description in case anyone wants to follow Danielle Jones, THR. So from all of us,
I copied Greg. We're
TBN,
Twitter handle.
I noticed that. You guys, Danielle THR,
He was
Greg
my
THR,
inspiration.
GrimmGreen THR.
And of course, no one outside this world knows what the hell THR is. Somebody
No,
from the
that's okay.
Hollywood-
But we know, Greg. We know. It's okay.
Yeah.
I once had to message somebody who worked at the Hollywood Reporter to ask him about their archives or something unrelated to vaping. And it took until 5 messages in for him to say, wait, you don't work for the Hollywood Reporter? So some people apparently think
Hollywood Reporter, THR.
Interesting.
Yes. Just confusing the world 3 letters at a time.
Yep. Well, thank you all. Hopefully we will have some good news in the next week. But regardless, we're going to keep fighting.
Exactly, Greg. Exactly. Regardless, we're going to keep fighting. Alex Wodak in Australia, he told me that harm reduction always wins. Harm reduction measures always win. It's just going to take time. And I'm here for it. Danielle's here for it. Greg's here for it. I'll report later this week, hopefully on Thursday, maybe sometime later this week with what happened, how everything went, if it was removed, if it wasn't, and then we move forward from there. So I'm going to say goodbye, everybody, from all of us here at the TBN studios. I don't have an outro, so we just